We grew up believing they were untouchable. Icons, legends, faces that seemed immune to pain, time, and weakness. But behind the spotlight, behind the applause, a darker truth has been unfolding in silence. While the world watched their movies, concerts, and championships, many of these stars were fighting battles far more terrifying than anything on screen. Hidden illnesses, near-death moments, bodies quietly breaking down. And the most shocking part? Some of them may be closer to the end than anyone ever realized. Denzel Washington, the icon who was never supposed to break. For generations, Denzel Washington wasn't just an actor. He was a symbol of control, power, and unshakable authority. On screen, he never flinched, never folded, never lost command. Whether playing a hardened detective, a grieving father, or a fearless leader, Denzel radiated something rare in Hollywood: presence. Audiences didn't just watch him, they trusted him. He felt indestructible, but real life doesn't follow scripts. Now, in his 70s, the man once believed to be bulletproof is facing battles no performance can hide. Years of physically demanding roles, relentless schedules, and constant pressure have taken a quiet toll. Hypertension, serious heart concerns, a body that no longer recovers the way it once did. His steps are slower, his roles fewer. Not because the fire is gone, but because his body is forcing limits he never needed before. What makes this story unsettling isn't weakness, it's silence. Denzel doesn't complain, he doesn't dramatize. He shows up disciplined, focused, still demanding excellence from himself while fighting exhaustion behind closed doors. Fans have begun to notice it in his eyes, the weight of age, the strain of carrying greatness for decades. And that raises a haunting question. How long can a legend continue to carry the expectations of an entire generation before the cost becomes too heavy to bear? Janet Jackson, the voice that may one day fall silent. Janet Jackson was never just a pop star. She was a force, a rhythm that shaped generations. From explosive choreography to deeply personal lyrics, her voice carried power, vulnerability, and control all at once. Every note felt intentional. Every performance felt flawless. For decades, fans believed Janet's voice was untouchable, as precise and disciplined as the woman behind it. But behind the perfectly timed steps and dazzling lights, a frightening reality has been unfolding in silence. For years now, Janet has been battling a serious vocal cord condition, the kind of diagnosis every singer dreads: throat strain, vocal instability, the looming possibility of surgery. Imagine standing before tens of thousands of fans, not knowing if your voice will survive the first chorus. For Janet, that fear isn't hypothetical. It's real. Every performance now requires intense vocal therapy, strict rest, and constant monitoring. Some tours were postponed, others quietly shortened. Fans noticed the pauses, the longer silences, the moments when the voice didn't soar quite the same. What makes her story unsettling isn't decline, it's uncertainty. Janet still performs, still gives everything, still refuses to disappear, but each appearance feels more fragile, more precious, like watching something beautiful, knowing it may not last forever. And the haunting question lingers with every note she sings: is this resilience, or a farewell being written one song at a time? Serena Williams, the champion who nearly lost everything off the court. Serena Williams was built like a force of nature: power, precision, fearlessness. For years, she didn't just win matches, she dominated history itself. 23 Grand Slam titles made her untouchable, a living symbol of strength and endurance. Fans believed nothing could break her. But her most terrifying battle didn't happen under stadium lights. It happened in a hospital room, far from the roar of the crowd. In 2017, after giving birth to her daughter, Serena suddenly struggled to breathe. Sharp pain shot through her chest. Doctors initially dismissed her concerns, but Serena trusted her instincts. Instincts sharpened by a lifetime of survival. She demanded a CT scan. What they found nearly ended her life: a pulmonary embolism, blood clots in her lungs that could have killed her within minutes. Surgery followed. Complications stacked up. For the first time, the strongest woman in tennis couldn't even walk without pain. Recovery was brutal. Every breath felt earned. Every step hurt. Yet Serena refused to disappear. She returned to professional tennis not as the invincible champion fans remembered, but as a mother, a survivor, and a woman carrying scars no trophy could erase. She reached 4 more Grand Slam finals, proving that true strength isn't dominance, it's survival. And in speaking out, Serena exposed a darker truth about maternal health risks faced by Black women worldwide. Her legacy is no longer just about winning, it's about living. Whoopi Goldberg, the voice that nearly disappeared forever. Whoopi Goldberg built her legacy on being unbreakable. Sharp-tongued, fearless, impossible to silence. She conquered comedy, drama, television, and film, earning EGOT status without ever fitting Hollywood's mold. Her presence alone could command a room. For decades, it seemed nothing could take her voice away, until suddenly she vanished. In 2019, Whoopi disappeared from public life with little explanation. When she finally returned to television, viewers noticed something was different. Her voice was softer, her energy reduced. Her eyes carried a weight no punchline could hide. Then the truth emerged. Double pneumonia and sepsis, a near-death experience that pushed her body to the edge. Doctors told her bluntly she was dangerously close to not surviving. For weeks, she couldn't walk on her own. Breathing required oxygen. Speaking felt exhausting. Each night brought the same terrifying question: would she wake up again? For a woman who once filled stages with nothing but presence, the silence was devastating. But Whoopi refused to let it end there. She returned not as the invincible icon audiences remembered, but as a survivor. She spoke openly about ignoring warning signs, about how strength doesn't make you immune. Even now, the aftermath lingers. She works less, moves slower. But when Whoopi speaks, people listen, because her voice was almost taken, and what remains is sharper, deeper, and earned through pain. This isn't a comeback story. It's proof that survival can be louder than fame. Samuel L. Jackson, the legend who survived the life that nearly took him. Samuel L. Jackson's voice alone could dominate a scene. Explosive, unforgettable, commanding. He turned rage into art and presence into power. By the time the world crowned him a Hollywood legend, it felt like he had always been invincible. But the truth is far darker. Long before the fame, before the Marvel empire and billion-dollar box offices, Jackson was quietly destroying himself. The 1970s and 80s were a blur of addiction. Drugs, alcohol, self-destruction hidden behind ambition. He came dangerously close to losing everything: his career, his family, his life. It took a last-ditch intervention and rehab to pull him back from the edge. Sobriety saved him, but it didn't erase the damage. Now, in his mid-70s, Jackson has admitted that those years left scars his body never fully recovered from. Stamina is limited. Medical checkups are routine, roles are carefully chosen. The man who once burned through sets with endless energy now moves with caution. What makes his story unsettling isn't decline, it's honesty. Jackson doesn't pretend. He says his greatest achievement isn't acting, it's surviving. Behind every red carpet appearance is discipline, restraint, and a constant awareness of mortality. When he appears on screen now, audiences aren't just watching a movie star. They're watching a man who beat addiction, outran death, and is still standing. Not fearless, but alive. And that may be the most powerful role he's ever played. Toni Braxton, The voice that sings while the body fights back. Toni Braxton's voice was never just beautiful. It was devastating, smooth, aching, impossibly intimate. When she sang, heartbreak felt personal. Unbreak My Heart didn't just top charts, it defined an era. To the world, Toni seemed timeless, elegant, untouched by struggle. But behind that velvet voice, her body was fighting a war no audience could see. In 2010, Toni revealed the truth she had been hiding for years: lupus, a chronic autoimmune disease where the body turns against itself. For Toni, it wasn't mild. It was terrifying. Flare-ups that left her unable to walk, hospitalizations that forced tour cancellations, nights when she feared organ failure, days when lifting a microphone felt impossible. Every performance became a risk, every note a gamble. One wrong push could cost her not just her career, but her life. What makes her story haunting isn't weakness, but persistence. Toni still steps onto the stage, knowing her body may betray her at any moment. She sings through pain, fatigue, and fear because music is the one thing lupus couldn't take away. Yet fans have noticed the pauses, the careful pacing, the moments where strength must be rationed. Toni doesn't chase perfection anymore. She chases survival. Today, her voice may tremble, but her resolve does not. She speaks openly to raise awareness, especially for Black women who are often diagnosed too late. Toni Braxton isn't just performing love songs anymore. She's singing proof that even when the body turns against you, the spirit can still refuse to surrender. Tracy Morgan, the comedian who fought his way back from the edge of death. Tracy Morgan built his career on chaos. Loud, unpredictable, fearless comedy that felt like it might spin out of control at any moment, and somehow always landed. From Saturday Night Live to 30 Rock, his energy was unstoppable. Until one night, everything went silent. In June 2014, a catastrophic crash on the New Jersey Turnpike changed his life forever. A Walmart truck slammed into his limo at full speed. One friend was killed instantly. Tracy was left in a coma, his body shattered, his brain severely injured. For weeks, doctors weren't sure if he would survive. When he finally woke up, the man who once sprinted across stages couldn't walk, couldn't talk clearly, couldn't even remember jokes. Comedy, the thing that defined him, was suddenly gone. Rehab was brutal and humiliating. He had to relearn how to move, how to speak, how to exist. Pain became constant. Confusion followed him everywhere, and the terrifying question hung in the air. Would Tracy Morgan ever be Tracy Morgan again? The comeback, when it came, wasn't flashy. It was fragile. 1 year later, he stepped onto the Emmy stage, shaky, changed, but alive. The standing ovation wasn't for laughter, it was for survival. Even today, the damage lingers. Memory issues, physical pain, mental fatigue. But Tracy refuses to quit. Every laugh he delivers now is earned through suffering. He didn't just survive a crash, he survived the long, quiet aftermath, the part no one sees and few ever escape. Eddie Murphy, the king of comedy who quietly stepped away to survive. At his peak, Eddie Murphy was everywhere. Movies, stand-up, television, sold-out arenas. He didn't just dominate comedy, he defined it. By his mid-20s, Eddie was already a global phenomenon, fueled by non-stop work and unstoppable momentum. To the public, he looked invincible. But behind the laughter, something was breaking. The truth was far less dramatic and far more human. Eddie stepped away because his health demanded it. His body had been pushed too far for too long. Fame didn't protect him from collapse. It accelerated it. For nearly a decade, he chose distance over applause, family over frenzy, healing over headlines. It wasn't quitting, it was survival. When Eddie finally returned, it wasn't with reckless energy or desperate jokes. It was with control, with purpose. Films like Dolomite Is My Name reminded the world that the brilliance never left. It simply needed room to breathe. Now in his 60s, Eddie works selectively, carefully, refusing to trade his health for hype again. The loudest lesson of his career may be this: sometimes the strongest move a legend can make is walking away before it's too late. Snoop Dogg, the untouchable icon who finally had to slow down. For decades, Snoop Dogg made survival look effortless, cool, unbothered, eternally smooth. He floated through hip-hop history as if nothing could touch him. From underground legend to global superstar, Snoop turned rebellion into branding and longevity into an art form. Fans believed he would outlast everyone, but even icons with 9 lives eventually hear their bodies whisper a warning. After years of non-stop touring, late nights, and a lifestyle built on excess, those whispers grew louder. Fainting spells, unexplained fatigue, quiet hospital visits that never made headlines. While Snoop rarely dramatized it, people close to him noticed the change. He wasn't bouncing back the way he used to. The energy that once felt endless now required recovery. The body that once shrugged off everything began asking for limits. What makes Snoop's story unsettling isn't collapse, it's awareness. In his 50s, the man who made indulgence look glamorous started talking about balance, about diet, about rest, about choosing family time over endless grind, especially his grandchildren. For someone whose image was built on being untouchable, that shift spoke volumes. He wasn't retiring, he was recalibrating. Snoop still performs, still creates, still carries the aura of a legend. But now it's measured, intentional, mindful. Not because he has something to prove, but because he wants to stay alive long enough to enjoy what he built. The myth of immortality has faded, and in its place stands something far more real, a legend learning that survival sometimes means slowing down before the damage becomes permanent. Fantasia Barrino, the voice that almost gave up on life. Fantasia Barrino didn't rise to fame polished or protected. She rose raw. At just 19, she won American Idol with a voice that sounded like survival itself, gospel-soaked, wounded, and powerful. Audiences felt her pain and called it authenticity. But what few realized was that Fantasia wasn't just performing struggle, she was living it. Behind the sudden fame came crushing pressure, financial chaos, industry manipulation, public judgment that never stopped. By 2010, the weight became unbearable. Fantasia was hospitalized after an overdose, a moment she later described not as a cry for attention, but a quiet desire to escape the pain. Headlines were brutal. Sympathy was rare. The world consumed the story and moved on, while she was left to pick up the pieces of a life that nearly ended. Recovery wasn't instant or glamorous. It was slow, humiliating, deeply personal. Therapy, faith, learning how to breathe again, emotionally and physically. Her body changed. Her confidence wavered. Even her voice, once fearless, sometimes carried hesitation. But Fantasia refused to disappear. She returned not pretending to be healed, but choosing to keep going anyway. Albums became confessionals. Broadway became redemption. Every performance turned into proof that broken doesn't mean finished. Today, when Fantasia sings, it's no longer just for applause. It's for survival. For anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed, unheard, or ready to give up. Her voice still carries pain, but now it carries something stronger, the sound of someone who stayed. Misty Copeland, dancing on a body that never stops hurting. Misty Copeland rewrote history with every step she took. As the first black principal ballerina at the American Ballet Theater, she didn't just dance. She shattered expectations in a world that told her she didn't belong. Grace, strength, precision, on stage, she looked effortless, untouchable. But behind the flawless lines and standing ovations was a reality few ever saw: constant pain. Ballet is brutal, and Misty's body has paid the price. Stress fractures, shin splints, chronic back injuries. Doctors warned her that continuing at this level could mean permanent damage, even difficulty walking later in life. For most dancers, that would be the end. For Misty, it became another barrier to push through. She taped her ankles, masked the pain, and stepped onto the stage knowing that one wrong landing could change everything. What makes her story haunting isn't injury, it's endurance. Each performance demanded not just technique, but survival. She carried the pressure of being perfect while already breaking, aware that every appearance represented more than herself. It was for every young girl who had been told she didn't fit the mold. In recent years, the toll has become more visible: fewer performances, carefully chosen appearances, and a body that demands rest more loudly than applause. Yet Misty refuses to disappear. She mentors, she speaks, she writes, she redefines what strength looks like: not a body without pain, but a spirit that keeps moving despite it. Misty Copeland doesn't dance because it's easy anymore. She dances because stopping would mean surrendering a legacy she fought too hard to build. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the giant, fighting an enemy no one could see. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar looked indestructible. Towering at 7'2", he dominated basketball with calm intelligence and a skyhook no one could stop. 6 MVPs, 6 championships. For decades, he seemed built to outlast everyone. But in 2009, Kareem faced an opponent no size or skill could overpower: leukemia. The diagnosis came quietly: chronic myeloid leukemia, a rare blood cancer that doesn't announce itself with drama, only slow, relentless danger. At first, Kareem didn't want the world to know. He feared being seen as weak. He feared the word itself. Treatments drained his energy, weakened the body that once carried a dynasty, and forced him to confront mortality for the first time. The giant who once ruled the paint now battled fatigue, medication side effects, and the constant awareness that the disease never truly goes away. What makes Kareem's story unsettling isn't fear. It's responsibility. He chose to go public not for sympathy, but to educate, to warn others, especially black men, about early detection and health disparities. He admitted that if he almost ignored the signs, how many others never get the chance? Today, the disease is managed, not cured. Every day is a calculation. Every appearance is deliberate. Kareem still writes, speaks, and inspires. Not as a towering athlete, but as a survivor living with a silent enemy. His legacy is no longer just about points and trophies. It's about confronting vulnerability head-on and proving that true strength isn't dominance. It's endurance. Kim Whitley, laughing in public while fighting for her life in private. Kim Whitley has always been the kind of comedian who makes laughter feel effortless. Fast, fearless, and full of life, she lit up sitcoms and stand-up stages with a joy that felt contagious. To audiences, Kim was energy personified, the woman who could turn chaos into comedy in seconds. But behind that laughter was a danger she could never joke away. Heart disease ran through her family like a curse: diabetes, strokes, sudden deaths that arrived without warning. For years, Kim ignored the signs, believing she was too busy, too strong, too alive for it to catch her. Then her body began sending signals she could no longer laugh off: extreme fatigue, shortness of breath, alarming weight changes. Reality hit hardest when she became a single mother. The thought was devastating. If she didn't change, she might not live long enough to raise her son. What makes Kim's story powerful isn't fear. It's action. She chose to confront the threat publicly. She changed her lifestyle, reworked her diet, and began speaking openly about preventable illness in the Black community. not as a doctor, not as a spokesperson, but as someone who almost learned the hard way. Comedy gave her a voice. Survival gave it purpose. Kim Whitley still makes people laugh, but now every joke carries something deeper, a reminder that health isn't guaranteed and ignoring your body can cost everything. Her story isn't about tragedy. It's about choosing life while there's still time and using laughter not as an escape but as a lifeline. Chris Rock, the sharpest mind, quietly fighting a battle no one could see. Chris Rock has always been the smartest voice in the room. Razor sharp, fearless, and brutally honest, his comedy didn't just make people laugh, it exposed uncomfortable truths. For decades, he dissected society with surgical precision, reading crowds instinctively, controlling timing down to the second. No one suspected that behind that mastery was a silent struggle he barely understood himself. As an adult, Chris was diagnosed with nonverbal learning disorder, a neurological condition that affects how the brain processes social cues, facial expressions, tone, and body language, the very tools a comedian depends on to survive. Conversations drained him, relationships confused him, misunderstandings followed him everywhere. While the world saw confidence on stage, off-stage he often felt isolated, disconnected, and overwhelmed by interactions most people take for granted. The revelation was devastating and liberating. Instead of hiding it, Chris confronted it head-on. He committed to intense therapy, sometimes up to 7 hours a week, determined to understand himself before the condition destroyed his personal life completely. The process was painful. It forced him to revisit failed relationships, emotional blind spots, and years of internal confusion he never had language for. What makes Chris Rock's story unsettling isn't weakness, it's contrast. A man celebrated for reading the world perfectly was quietly struggling to understand it at all. And yet, that struggle reshaped his comedy. It became deeper, more vulnerable, more human. Chris Rock didn't lose his edge. He sharpened it with self-awareness. Today, he isn't just exposing society's flaws. He's proving that brilliance and brokenness often coexist, and survival sometimes begins with finally understanding your own mind. Wendy Williams, the Queen of Talk, slowly losing the one thing that made her powerful. For years, Wendy Williams ruled daytime television with nothing but a microphone and fearless honesty. Loud, unfiltered, impossible to ignore. Her voice was the show. She built an empire on speaking faster, sharper, and bolder than anyone else. To fans, Wendy seemed indestructible. But behind the wigs, the laughter, and the purple chair, her body was quietly turning against her. The first cracks appeared when Wendy began battling Graves's disease, an autoimmune disorder that attacked her thyroid. Sudden weight changes, heart palpitations, muscle weakness, brain fog. Then came lymphedema, causing painful swelling in her legs, making standing on set a struggle. Viewers noticed her slurred speech, her confusion, her exhaustion, and rumors exploded. Few realized this wasn't scandal, it was decline. Then came the most devastating revelation. Wendy was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia and frontotemporal dementia, a rare degenerative brain condition that slowly steals language, memory, and personality. For a woman whose entire identity was built on words, the irony is cruel. Each day, the voice that made her famous slips further away. Conversations become harder. Thoughts vanish mid-sentence. Independence fades. What makes Wendy's story heartbreaking isn't just illness, it's visibility. Her struggle unfolded in public. Cameras captured moments of confusion, vulnerability, and fear. Yet Wendy allowed it, not for attention, but for truth. Today, the Queen of Talk fights in silence, no longer commanding rooms but reminding the world of something far more unsettling. Even the loudest voices can be taken. And sometimes, The bravest thing left is simply surviving when the spotlight finally goes dark. Gabrielle Union, the star who turned private. Grief into public power. Gabrielle Union has always projected confidence. Poised, radiant, in control. The kind of woman Hollywood framed as unbreakable. From Bring It On to being Mary Jane, she embodied strength with a smile. But behind the glamour was a decade-long nightmare she kept hidden from the cameras, repeated miscarriages that quietly shattered her world. For nearly 10 years, Gabrielle tried to become a mother. What followed were 8 or 9 losses, each one a physical trauma, each one an emotional collapse. Hormones, surgeries, endless procedures. She bled in silence while the world praised her beauty and success. Doctors told her she was barren. The word landed like a sentence. And still, she kept trying, carrying grief that few people knew existed, especially in a culture that rarely allows Black women to admit vulnerability. What makes her story unsettling isn't tragedy, it's isolation. Gabrielle felt pressure to stay strong, to smile through pain, to protect an image while her body kept betraying her. The shame was suffocating. So she did something radical. She spoke. She told the truth about infertility, miscarriage, and the mental toll no one warns you about. She named the grief. She refused to let silence win. In 2018, her daughter arrived via surrogacy, not as a consolation, but as a triumph. Gabrielle made one thing clear. Motherhood isn't defined by biology. It's defined by love, resilience, and choice. Today, she uses her voice to fight for reproductive justice and mental health awareness, transforming personal loss into collective strength. Gabrielle Union didn't just survive heartbreak. She turned it into permission for millions of women to finally speak.